Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience today. We are here on Tuesday, March the 23rd for Higher Education Subcommittee. If the clerk, please, would take the roll.
Representatives Baum, here. Cochran, here. Darby, here. Gillespie, Hakeem, here. Parkinson, Chairman White, here. Chairman Lafferty, here. Chairman, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you for that. Before we get started, do we have any personal orders? Anybody have any announcements, anything they'd like to address? Chairman White, you're recognized. Oh, we're in session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's probably more, but I do want to introduce my friend Skip Redmond. He's from, we're working with Skip for years. He's up here visiting us with today, a particular bill, but I just wanted to recognize Skip and thank you for making the drive up, and talk to you later.
Anyone else? Okay, with that out of the way, we do have a calendar today. We are going to make a couple of changes to the order in order to accommodate our most favorite Chair Lady Hazelwood. If you'd like to come and present House Bill 1396. And we have a motion and a second. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm glad that I'm your favorite. The budget's still to be decided. I know when I will no longer be your favorite. But I am here today to talk about the BEST bill. This bill is simply, it's House Bill 1396. There are no amendments. It's a very clean bill. And all we're doing with this is addressing the BEST tuition plan that was established as a way for families to save money for future higher education costs. And the goal at the time was to lock in the tuition rates through a prepayment of future higher education costs. And the plan was that those dollars would be invested and would meet the cost of tuition as tuition increased. But subsequent to being established, and the plan was just, frankly, it struggled and could not meet the actuarial assumptions and went into deficit status. The state, over time, has, with two different infusions of cash, has put in a total of $40 million, but the plan is just not sustainable. It continues to be challenged. The plan was terminated in effective November 13th, 2015, just because it was unfeasible to continue. However, we still have 191 individuals that are left in the plan. And what this bill would do is to simply move those folks they'd still take their money, they'd be able to either cash out their dollars, would be a tax penalty on that if they chose to do that, or they can move their dollars to other plans that we have in place. So with that explanation, Mr. Sponsor, I would renew the motion, or ask you to renew the motion.
All right, thank you for that explanation. Chairman White, do you have a question?
Chairman Hazelwood, there's an old saying that says, "He who holds all the gold rules the world." I just want to say this is probably the best and strongest bill I have ever seen. Yeah.
I knew you'd love it.
Yeah, exactly.
I knew you'd love it.
Thank you.
It was the best bill at the time, but it just hasn't worked out well, for the state. And again, with only 191 members, we just need to close it out. There's a lot of administrative costs that continue, a lot of overhead that goes along with administering the plan. So
it makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Chairman Hakeem, you're recognized. Question's been called. We are going to vote now on House Bill 1396. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. And the ayes have it. And that bill will pass on to full committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Yes, ma'am. All right. In the world of musical calendars, if Dr. Ramsey is still here, we'll give him a shot next. Please come on up. House Bill 240. Chairman Ramsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll take a shot. This, I appreciate the motion and second on the bill. This bill, as amended, the amendments 5201, which makes the bill, and so what this is a surprisingly enough for your expertise, this is a corrections reform bill. For the last 3 years, the County of Blount has tried to put together a transition center as a joint development of surrounding counties. So last year we took this bill to the floor. It had in it the operation of such a facility with a local option commitment with other counties around it, and so we tried to put this in the code, and then COVID came along and everything shut down. The Senate didn't hear it. It passed the floor in the House, and the governor saw it, and he has been trying for the last couple of years to do a corrections reform bill, and so he said, we want to include this. And so this bill in the Senate was at that time put in the general sub, and then they came to us just briefly a couple of weeks ago and said, look, your code is not in the scope of our bill, so you're going to have to go back and pass a portion of the code that addresses the operation and the setting up of the local agreements to do this. So this is property that exists in Blount County. It's already been zoned. It's been made available. We're going to try to put together a local agreement with surrounding counties, Monroe, Loudoun, Knox, and Sevier, and anybody else that wants in on it. And so what we're asking for is to put the definition in code of a joint development operation for a transition center, and any amounts contributed to the transition center pursuant to subsection A are revenues of the transition center that may be used in a lawful purpose. So the operation is, this is a requirement. And the reason it's here is this code actually takes in agreements and contracts with the Board of Regents. So that's why it ended up in this committee. So I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you for that explanation. As a procedural matter, I must back up for a moment. I missed something. This was an amendment that we just heard. I need a motion and a second for the amendment. Second, we got that. We've had the explanation of the amendment. Thank you for that. And the tracking code that I have is 005201, which matches what you read off to us at the beginning, I believe. And with that, committee, any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none. Question on the bill's been called. All those in, I'm sorry, question on the amendment. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Anybody opposed? No. And the amendment goes on. And we have question on the bill. Any questions, members? I think we're ready for the vote then. All those in favor? House Bill 240 passing through, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. The ayes have it. Well done, sir. And you are heading toward...
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your
full
help.
committee.
And thank you for your shot. Didn't hurt a bit.
Oh, yes, sir. All right. Now, we're going to get one more musical note here. And we are going to reach out this time to Chairman Reagan. And we're ready to motion and second on House Bill 1238 has been recognized. Chairman Reagan, you're recognized. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I have the honor of carrying an administration bill. And before we actually get into that, let me make a few comments here that are appropriate to this bill. We as a nation have endured revolution, civil war, world war, Cold War, and regional wars. We have survived these conflicts, and won. Today, we are in a new kind of war, an information war. The Chinese Communist Party, rise to legitimate prosperity, has become one of the greatest threats to the American way of life. Moreover, it is fueled by theft and abuse of information at every turn. For example, the Chinese Communist Party steals intellectual property. Then it obscures its intentions and covers its tracks with propaganda. This is not an abstract phenomena out in the remote realm of geopolitics. It is happening in our nation, in full view, in front of all of us. Right here in our own state of Tennessee, home to some of our nation's greatest universities, the Communist Party, Chinese Communist Party, is exerting and growing its influence. Under the direction of the top officials of the Chinese Communist Party Office of Overseas Propaganda, China established a network of 50 so-called Confucius Institutes at American educational institutions. In 2009, Li Changchung, then head of the agitprop, or the propaganda for the Chinese Communist Party, called these outposts an important part of China's overseas propaganda setup. Their MO is simple. China gives American host institutions cash, and the CCP operatives then get to teach distorted, regime-friendly history of a Chinese state to American students. Meanwhile, these same operatives get to live in close proximity to all the resources of our modern research institutions, and gives them an important insight to information about sensitive and often taxpayer-funded activities of our brightest minds. As one of the first acts of his office, President Biden revoked the rules proposed by President Trump that would have put pressure on American universities to disclose their foreign ties and funding. Perhaps Mr. Biden should have consulted with his nominee to be director of the CIA, William Burns. He just testified in front of the Senate for confirmation that the Confucius Institutes were a genuine risk to U.S. security. Furthermore, he said that if he were president of a university or college that hosted a Confucius Institute, he would shut it down. House Bill 1238 does just what William Burns suggested. It forecloses any opportunity for these odious organizations on all Tennessee universities and college campuses. Additionally, it requires these institutions to report any foreign gifts or contracts from foreign sources over $10,000 each fiscal year.
Chairman Reagan, may I interrupt you just 1 second? Are we talking about the amendment on the bill? I've unfortunately made a mistake twice now.
Yes, we are, sir.
All right, and that draft code on that amendment is 5503.
You are correct, sir.
And can I get a motion and a second for the amendment? Second. All right, thank you for that, committee. Chairman Reagan, please proceed.
Well, thank you. In summary, as a matter of fact, if you want to put the amendment on the bill, I'll summarize the bill, and then you can have me out of here.
All right, let's do that then. Haven't had the motion and the second. All those in favor of adding amendment 5503 to the bill, vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, the amendment's on the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
4 statements in summary. This bill provides greater transparency for taxpayers at our higher education campuses. This bill bans Confucius Institutes, which, quite frankly, have concerning ties to communist regimes. This bill requires public institutions to disclose gifts and contracts from foreign sources and to refuse any gift or contract that poses a credible national security threat. This bill also establishes a disclosure report that public institutions must submit to the comptroller for public review. With that summary, I humbly ask for your passage of the bill.
Members of the committee, do we have any questions for the sponsor? Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. No question. I did want to just put this on the record and get Chairman Reagan's comments. Everything I agree with what you're saying. I do want to point out that in 1949, when mainland China went communist, there was one nation, Taiwan, that had to move off the mainland under Chiang Kai-shek, and they are still fighting for their independence today. We passed a resolution, I think, a year or two ago, supporting the nation of Taiwan, and they're trying to work with our state through MOUs and other things. So I just kind of want to point out that when we talk about mainland China, we're not talking about Taiwan.
You are correct, sir.
Thank you.
Committee, any other questions? Seeing none. All those in favor of passing House Bill 1238, please vote in favor by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, vote no. And that's it. The ayes have it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. I appreciate your indulgence.
Heading out to full committee. Item number 2 on today's calendar, House Bill 572, has been taken off notice by Chairman Reagan. With that, we are going to go out of session for just a moment. I think we have completed what we're going to call a regular calendar, and we're going to take a quick look at some of the inner workings of our lottery-funded education system. Lou Henneman, if you would, please come to the front. I'm going to gavel out of session now, and we're going to hear from Mr. Lou Henneman. And please, for the record, you know how it works, state your name and everything.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lou Hanneman with the Higher Education Commission and the Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation. I appreciate this opportunity as you begin to think through the lottery calendar. And so just for a bit of context, wanted to give you a sense of where we are with the lottery and what that looks like. Going back just a hair, when the General Assembly passed the Tennessee Promise Scholarship Act, one of the things they did was put a stake in the ground on any additional or excess revenues in the lottery, sweeping them into the Tennessee Promise endowment. And why do we do this? We do this because eventually we want the Tennessee Promise program, which is one of our premier financial aid opportunities, to be self-sustaining. Self-sustaining, we would define as the earnings off of that endowment paying not only for the actual costs, but also providing a buffer, if you will, for the anomalous downturn years. And so right now, the Tennessee Promise program is running at about $31 to $32 million annually. So a self-sustaining fund off of earnings would look something like, $40 million. If we can reach that point, then all of a sudden, everything that we have been sweeping one year after the next from the excess revenues in the lottery can then begin to be used for expansions. A lot of these expansions have come before you in recent years. Examples: buying power for the Hope Scholarships, expansion of dual enrollment, adding eligible institutions to other lottery programs, things of that nature. We're almost there. The last couple of years, Tennessee Higher Education Commission and TSAC have begun to build into those projected sweeps about a $5 million or so window of a financial opportunity. Why do we do this? We do this because over time, there are necessary adjustments and tweaks to existing lottery programs that need to be taken into account in any given fiscal year. This would not be enough money to substantially alter a program, to add a new program altogether. What these are really designed to do is to accommodate, past inequities or past language that has in some way prohibited a student who's in an existing program from maximizing their award and things of that nature. So again, in any given fiscal year, in recent years, we've said $3 to $5 million is your kind of flex space, and the same holds true for this year. One other comment about, maybe the bills on your calendar this year. Last year, for many of you who are returning this year, the legislature passed the FAST Act, which was the single largest financial aid overhaul in several decades. And part of the original bill that moved out of the Education Subcommittee and the full committee were 4 components that dealt with, as I mentioned, specific student groups who, for whatever reason, the language in the code made it more difficult for them to, pursue their education based on the language. This impacted non-traditional students, our veterans who were participating in lottery through the Helping Heroes grant, homeschool students pursuing both dual enrollment and Hope Lottery eligibility, and foster children. 3 of those bills are on your calendar today. The reason they're on your calendar today is because in the Finance Committee last year, when the COVID pandemic became a thing and the budgets began to be reconsidered, we made the proactive step to remove those components from the FAST Act. Rather than pass anything that had a fiscal note, taking an abundance of caution, but decided to bring those back this year because the need to adjust those programs is great for the students in those current programs. Those bills, again, it's House Bill 139, House Bill 646, and House Bill 1150 on your calendar, are the 3 components from the FAST Act last year that the Higher Education Commission brought those, again, to very specifically address situations facing students last year that the language needed to be corrected. They do have a fiscal impact, but of course would fit within the scope of that $5 million in any given year. Would certainly be open to answering any additional questions the committee might have.
Representative Hakeem, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, is it Hanneman?
Hanneman, yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. To be able to fully fund, what was the phrase we used, self-sustaining, what kind of dollars would we be looking at
So,
to get to that level?
sure. So currently, the endowment is earning where this year, for example, I think the expenditures on the lottery, the Tennessee Promise, was right at $31.8 million. We were, I think, like at 31.5 or 31.2, somewhere in that neighborhood. So just under the earnings paying for the actual cost of the program this year. One caveat to that is we had a number of students who were eligible but didn't enroll during this cycle. Moving forward, we see, kind of those numbers progressively getting higher, but the earnings with every year that we sweep the excess lottery revenue in from the TELS, from the lottery program, the compounding interest puts us even closer. And thank you to the treasurer who does an amazing job with those funds. Our projections, while very conservative, have been pretty true to form. We predict that probably by 2023, 2024, we will have almost the necessary buffer, which opens up, again, those conversations about significant expansion within the lottery, by 2024, 2025. That assumes, also, if I could add, that the components going into those numbers, that being the lottery sweep, the gaming funds, off the online gaming and whatnot, hold steady.
If I may continue.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I'm the bills that you spoke of, I believe it was 139, 646, and 1150.
Yes, sir.
If those bills were funded, does that put off the timeline you're talking about to become sustainable?
Sure. Actually, these bills are relatively inexpensive, certainly by comparison to some, but they're relatively inexpensive anyway. But again, they fit within, and what we've done in the last few years, kind of recognizing the need to make some adjustments, we build into our projected sweep this $5 million range. And so the $5 million is actually not a part of those projections. And so we will reach those sustainability points in time irrespective of the use of those funds to cover these programs.
Okay. And the 3 to 5 million that is proposed, would it only cover these 3 programs, or is there some flexibility or play in that?
There's some flexibility. These 3 programs don't max out that available dollar usage. THEC and TSAC's typical stance on legislation anything impacting the lottery would be to be deferred. The decisions on how to encumber the use of, lottery expenditures is completely the decision of the General Assembly. And so the decision to move beyond that $5 million is a decision for you and your colleagues to make. As the implementors of, or the administrators of those financial aid dollars, we stand agnostic as to, what your decisions are. I only referenced these three bills because they were a part of that legislation last year that moved and then were pulled out because of concerns around, how do we budget for COVID and so forth.
Okay, now one last question, if I may. If I'm understanding you correctly, if we stay under or within that $3 to $5 million range, we will not hinder our reaching the sustainability goal in 23 or 24.
Correct.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members, any other questions? Representative Cochran, you're recognized.
So, Mr. Hanneman, once we reach that level of sustainability, so it's at that point, the $5 million that we're sweeping in there each year, that's correct, right? About $5 million that we sweep in each year, is that?
Well, there's about $5 million that we're setting aside.
Okay, gotcha.
For these types of accommodations. The
Yeah.
actual sweep, if you include the funding from the gaming dollars, is really more on the order of, probably anywhere between 70 and 100 million, depending on how well the lottery does in a given year.
Okay. So, and I know this is going to be a ballpark figure, so I won't hold you to the specific amount, but once we reach that level of sustainability, again, if as long as gaming and the lottery holds true, what would be a ballpark number you think at that point that we would have the ability to work with to maybe expand some lottery programs? What would be just a general figure?
I think if you took a measured approach and folded in programs over time, you could move fairly rapidly, say within 5 years or so, going from an increase of expenditure of, say, 15 to 30, right on up to 50.
Okay.
I think that would, that would encumber, say, 50 of that 80 million coming over into the Lottery Corporation, into the Promise Endowment, but also allow you to maintain a sweep, if you will, to kind of further buffer and further bolster the endowment to the point where, the earnings in the endowment are actually providing you a $10 to $15 million buffer rather than relying on that sweep to provide the buffer.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
That does, thank you.
Members, any other questions? I've got one about the endowment. Is there a number, a percentage that is anticipated that we are working off of for a return? Those dollars are invested, I'm sure. Is there a percentage that we work off of with that? And do we recognize that we have been in a bull market for the last 10, 11 years and that these bull markets don't last forever?
Sure. So the estimates we've been using over time, going truly back more than a decade, has been about 4%. Also bear in mind that the tuition increase that we build into all of this has also been at 4%. And those tuition increases that we have been using to account for some of that growth in expenditure has been at zero practically for the last 5 years. And so we have tried to err on the side of ultra conservative on expected revenue and aggressive on what our projected expenditures are, and it has served us well over time that we have come in under the mark repeatedly.
Thank you for that. Members, do we have any other questions? Chairman White?
Clarification.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Representative Hakeem, you're telling us if we stay under 5 million this year, we are not affecting our long-term. That's what you just said, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
One more time. Last call. Questions for the gentleman? All right. I don't see any more questions. Thank you for that, sir. We'll go back in session. And the purpose for the exercise was to let some of our colleagues know why it is that some bills are politely being asked to hold off on and others we're still working toward. So just wanted to get that out there for everybody. Having said that, let's move back to the lottery calendar. Up next, item number 5, looks like House Bill 139 by Leader Lamberth. Is that going to be Representative Faison present? Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Palm. Please, you're recognized. Oh, do we have motion? All right.
Thank you all.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Lafferty. This is an administration bill, and it's a bill designed to help foster children. We feel like foster children, as they age out of the program, may be disadvantaged in some ways. They may have less family financial support available to them, and they may have also experienced adverse childhood experiences. And so this bill helps foster children in 2 ways. Number one, it expands the Hope Foster Child Tuition Grant Program, and it creates a foster child liaison pilot program at universities. Let me make a few more comments on each of those 2 parts. Currently, in order to be eligible for the Hope Foster Child Tuition Grant, you have to have been in the custody of DCS for 1 year between your 14th birthday and when you would have aged out of the program at age 18. But there are some foster children that enter the program after they've turned age 17, and they can't acquire that 1 year in custody because there's not a year left between when they enter the program after they turn age 17 and their 18th birthday. So the first change that this bill makes is it expands eligibility. It allows these 17-year-olds who enter the foster care program after their 17th birthday to be eligible for this child tuition grant. The second part of the bill sets up a foster child liaison pilot program at 5 universities in the state of Tennessee, where a foster child or a former foster child at one of these universities would work with the liaison. The liaison would provide them with information, would mentor them, would advocate for them, with the goal ultimately of increasing graduation rates and retention rates for these individuals at school, at the universities. This bill does have a fiscal note. It's about $27,000 in the first year. It goes up to $44,000 in the second year and $61,000 in the third year. But there will be a funding letter from the governor to support this. These funds, though, would ultimately come from the lottery. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Committee members, any questions? Chairman White, you're recognized.
And I will listen to the rest of the committee. I think we should always support our foster children who need all the support that we can offer. And being that, I'm adding this up to Mr. Hanneman. If I'm doing this wrong at some point, you let me know. But with the total of the third year, it's not taking any more than $61,000 a year out of the lottery fund. I would recommend that we pass this bill.
Representative Hakeem, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarity, when we talk about $61,000, is that per student or is that in total?
Please, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. It's the total cost of the program. You may wonder how many foster children this program will impact. The projections are that 5 foster children would use this expanded eligibility to receive one of these tuition grants each year, and that there would be a retention rate such that about 3 of them would continue the next year. So in year number 1, there'd be 5 students. In year number 2, there'd be 5 new students, with 3 being retained from the first year. The cost is highest in the third year, and it's because in the third year you've got 5 new students, 3 being retained from the prior year, and some fraction of 3 being retained from 2 years earlier. So the $61,000 figure in year 3 covers all of the foster children in the program, which is going to, again, be a number of children that's between 5 and 10, depending on which year of the program you're looking at, whether it's year 1, 2, or 3.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I support the recommendation of Chairman White.
Members, any further questions? All right, let's vote on House Bill 139. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. And the ayes have it. Congratulations. I'm sorry, it's going to full committee. Up next, we have item number 6, House Bill 1150 by Chairman Hicks. Do we have motion on the bill? And second? All right, we have motion and a second. Chairman Hicks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Committee. This bill modernizes the Helping Heroes Act by allowing TSAC the latitude to add recent and future campaign designations through rule rather than statute, and also removes a provision that limits the scope of the Helping Heroes program. And of course, a lot of the discussion came with Mr. Hanneman as he described this, but this does fit within the fiscal note does fit within the lottery education accounts $5 million sweeper that he was referring to.
Sounds like that's conclusion.
That is the conclusion.
Committee, have we got any questions on the bill? Question's been called. Any objections? All right, let's go ahead and vote on House Bill 1150. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? No. And the ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
Committee.
Representative. And out to full committee. And next up, item number 7, House Bill 711 by Chairman Hurt. Need a motion? And can I get a second? Motion and a second have been heard. Representative Hurt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. And while I'm here with this legislation for the third year, bringing it back to, I understand the precaution and I appreciate the information given previously. If you would indulge me for a few minutes to plead my case for this legislation, I would appreciate it and would appreciate your consideration. House Bill 711 expands the definition of eligible post-secondary institutions to include Western Governors University, Tennessee, as an eligible institution to serve students through the non-traditional Hope Scholarship. The non-traditional Hope Scholarship was created to serve low-income, high-need adult Tennesseans. Eligible students must have an income of less than $36,000 a year, be over the age of 25, and be in good academic standing. This scholarship serves adult learners who are looking to better the lives of their families through education, which is the very student WGU-TN was designed to serve. Now, members, as I stand here before you today, I support our state brick and mortar institutions as much as anybody and appreciate the jobs they're doing for our traditional students and non-traditional students. But I also support options for students, including those non-traditional students. A little bit about Western Governors University, Tennessee. It's a nonprofit, 60-plus degrees, business, K-12 teacher education, IT, health professions, including nursing. It is a competency-based education, which means students can go at their pace. They can complete as fast or as slow as their schedule allows. Very flexible. WGU actually has an agreement with the state, a memorandum of understanding signed in 2013, and it states the purpose. The state of Tennessee is committed to the promotion and implementation of online competency-based degree programs by Western Governors University. This memorandum of understanding shall specify the roles and responsibilities of the state, WGU, and nonprofit corporation named WGU Tennessee to be formed. WGU Tennessee makes them a Tennessee institution. They also have legislative authorization through House Bill 189. So let's look at the return on investment after 6 years. The state provided a one-time $5 million appropriation to support the establishment and development of WGU Tennessee and the online competency-based degree programs initiated by WGU. Since then, WGU Tennessee has received no direct state appropriations. They produced 6,728 graduates and 4,554 active students. That's average of $743 per graduate based on the state's contribution up to this point. They also worked on a pilot program WGU Academy with community colleges to get students' remedial courses taken care of before they came to them. WGU Tennessee graduates are succeeding. Most WGU students graduate in 2.5 years. This is not a watered-down degree. 88% of WGU graduates are employed full-time in their degree field. 77% of WGU graduates say their education was worth the cost compared to the national average of 37%. 3-year student loan default for graduating undergrads is 4.1%, less than half the national average of 9.7%. The average student loan debt at graduation for WGU is $14,254, half the national average. WGU, again, is requesting only non-traditional Hope, which goes to students who pay their own way for at least one term while earning a 2.75 GPA and whose household income is $36,000 per year or less. As most WGU students are employed full-time, at this time, only about 8% of those students will qualify, which is roughly 350. Why should WGU Tennessee students be eligible? 69% are underserved students, 41% first generation, 24% rural, 23% low income, 17% ethnic minority. The median age is 39 years old, non-traditional students. 71% work full-time, 10% work part-time. 9.6% are active military veterans or spouses of military members. Bear with me a little longer and I'll finish. Setting the record straight, let's look at some of the things that have been claimed. If we allow WGU Tennessee to access non-traditional Hope, it'll open up the floodgates. This proposed bill is narrowly tailored to apply to only WGU Tennessee as a state-endorsed competency-based university operating in Tennessee for more than 5 years. Any other college would also be required to go through the process of proving their performance outcomes. We would be sending money to an out-of-state institution. All 177 WGU Tennessee employees and all 4,554 students are residents and taxpayers of the state of Tennessee. In conclusion, as a conservative, I appreciate the job WGU is doing for our non-traditional students and the quality of education these students are getting for their investment. I firmly believe that allowing non-traditional Hope scholarships to go to WGU Tennessee students is a worthwhile investment, and the outcomes are worth it in the state of Tennessee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that, Chairman Hurt. With that, any questions? Chairman Yusuf Hakim, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman Hurt, I'm seeking some clarity on some questions. And so please, I won't, my intent is not to come across,
Sure,
in a negative manner, because some questions have been posed to me. Is the university, well, I'm gonna call it the university, is the school, is it required to go through THEC for, I guess it's certification and I guess the results they get and so forth?
she's not on the list.
Chairman Hurt, I'm sorry, you said?
Can I ask for information from someone? She is not on the list to speak, but to clarify his question.
Could Lou Hanneman perhaps answer the question? He's with THEC and he's in the room. All right, let's go out of session for just a moment. And again, if you would, state your name for the record.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lou Hanneman with the Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation and THEC as well, or Higher Education Commission. It's my understanding that that original chartering language was considered the authorization to operate here in Tennessee as a chartered entity. In fact, it also created their chancellorship in addition to that. And so while they don't receive operating dollars from the state of Tennessee, I don't believe they go through the annual authorization process that, say, some of our for-profit institutions would go through.
Okay.
Please follow up.
All right, thank you, sir. Um, if you could, to the question of if one institution that is perceived as online is afforded this opportunity, would we be put in a position of other institutions online, I guess in a sense, turning them down? Or is there a criteria in place that we use for something like that?
It's my understanding that this language constrains it to WGU, but in terms of setting a precedence, you very well could. There are other institutions that are of like accreditation and of like model, business model, the competency component notwithstanding, that could possibly come in years out. But, that would be kind of a case-by-case situation, as I understand it.
Okay, and one last question that you may not be able to answer. In its original agreement, I may have all this wrong, original agreement with the state, was there an understanding that they would not seek lottery dollars?
So this would be anecdotal on my part, but I was there for the proceedings when they were before the committee, and there was a reference made to not seeking lottery dollars.
Okay. All right, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. No more questions for,
Oh,
all right, we're going to gavel back in session. And I believe Chairman White might have a question for the bill sponsor.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this is one that has been for us for several years, and I think it's eventually will be a time coming. What I'd like to suggest to the committee, only my suggestion, the committee will of the committee, being that this is a 1.3 million draw out, I would like to suggest that we possibly bring this one up in January next year when we see how our self-sustaining funds are, and not do it right today. Put it off 1 year and see if we're going to have enough money coming in the future where we don't have to worry about draining down our self-sustaining funds. But that would be my recommendation. Or,
Was your motion to roll to January?
okay, I'll make a motion then that we roll it to January.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. And before we go there, I told myself when I was assigned this role, I would try not to be the chairman that speaks on every bill. I'm going to stick to that, but not this time. The idea of bringing some extra competition into the state to go against these traditional brick and mortar institutions, I'm enamored by. Cost in higher education consistently for decades has outpaced inflation on every other item out there. When and where something like this can be implemented and help bring down the cost, I'm a big fan of, and I hope that we aren't, if we get this done next year, I hope that we don't put WGU in a situation where the money's so easy they lose that business acumen that's helped them to be successful up to this point. Having said that, we have a motion. We have a second to roll this to January's calendar. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? All right, the ayes have it. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee.
All right, moving right along. Item number 8, House Bill 542 by Chairman Powers. Can we get a motion? And second, to properly motion, properly second. Chairman Powers, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, House Bill, I'm sorry, I had the Senate bill on here. House Bill 542 is the Middle College Scholarship Program. The Middle College Program is operated by a 2-year post-secondary institution in partnership with LEAs. It permits students in the fall of their junior year in high school to enter a 2-year institution to simultaneously earn a high school diploma and an associate degree in 2 years. This bill would raise the scholarship funds from available from $1,000 per semester to $1,250 per semester. Currently, it costs about $4,000 per year, so this would give them $2,500 per year toward that $4,000. 95% of the students that complete the program transition to a four-year institution. They have a great rate of transition to that. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. Committee members, do we have any questions? Seeing none. Oh, Representative Chairman White, you're recognized.
Just wanted to point out the fiscal note, you're only sitting at 139,000, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Let me, and I need I'm sorry.
Please,
Could I
proceed.
get a clarification, and I have a question for you too. When they take because they're taking that two-year program, the middle college, does that save the state that two-year money of a Hope Scholarship that they will not be eligible for after that? And I thought it did, and it,
I'm sorry, I'm getting a nod, yes.
okay. And it doesn't, for some reason, they don't figure that into the fiscal note, so that would actually be a reduction of that amount that you talked about, but we don't have that figured in the note per se.
I'm in favor of your bill.
Thank you. Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Seeing none, we'll vote on House Bill 542. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. And the ayes have it. We're going to pass this on to full committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, committee.
And next up, item 9 by Representative Ogles, 1340 has been taken off notice, which moves us to item number 10. Is Representative Faison still in the room? He is. All right. House Bill 646. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
And second? Second. All right. Chairman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. Bless your hearts for the work y'all doing here. Wow. Members, what we're doing is making it to where if you're a homeschool student, you can get the Tennessee Promise. And since you might not have, what's the word I'm looking for? A GPA, we put some standards on the back page 2 of the bill. You have to ACT score of 21 or pass GED or 2 dual enrollment courses where you make at least a B.
Sounds like we've concluded. Questions? Representative Hakeem, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have the fiscal note on there?
Well, yes, sir, I do. Since you asked, it's $133,300.
Thank you very much.
Chairman White, you have a question?
I would like to recommend that we look at this one favorably for homeschoolers.
We've already had motion and a second on the bill. Are there any further questions from the committee? Seeing none, committee members, all those in favor of passing House Bill 646, please respond by saying aye. Any opposed, so say no. And the ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Faison. We're going to full committee. Let's take one out of order here. Representative Chairman Zachary has waited very patiently. Thank you for that. Item number 13 on the addendum, House Bill 708. Chairman Zachary, thank you for coming to the podium. Do I have motion on the bill? And second? All right, Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Members, this is a fairly simple bill, but will have a profound impact on the disadvantaged resident students in the state of Tennessee, and this has zero to do with lottery funds as we transition away from your previous discussion. As many of you know, the Ben Atchley Grant was passed in the 1990s. It provides financial assistance to disadvantaged undergraduate students here in our state. This piece of legislation extends the eligibility for the grant to also include Tennessee resident students who are enrolled in a private post-secondary institution that is accredited by Regional Accrediting Association and its primary campus is domiciled in the state of Tennessee. The way we have drafted this piece of legislation, members. It is extremely narrow and only applies to South College, which its primary campus is in Knoxville. South College is the only private institution that has its primary campus domiciled in Tennessee, is regionally accredited, and currently not receiving access to the Ben Atchley grant. The grant is not funded with lottery dollars, as I mentioned. The additional grant funds will be covered by the existing Tennessee Student Assistant Award Program Fund and will not require an additional state appropriation. Each year, $113 million is appropriated to that fund, and currently $103 million is being used. So you'll notice this particular piece of legislation has a $1.8 million fiscal note. That 1.8 will come out of that 113 that is already appropriated. So we're not pulling money from any additional resources. There's no additional appropriation needed for this. The $113 million that's appropriated for the TSAA fund will cover this 1.8 million. And instead of 103 million being used and 10 million sitting unused, we're going to be able to take an additional 1.8 million to help disadvantaged students that will be resident students here in the state. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you for that neat and clean conclusion. Members, we have questions. Representative Hakeem, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Chairman. No trick question, but how, in this instance, are we defining, I believe you said a needy student or disadvantaged student?
It's a disadvantaged student, yes, sir, and that's already defined in code. I would have to rely on an expert, but I don't have anybody to be able to testify with that. But my understanding was it's those with a family income under $40,000.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Representative White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'd just like to make mention, I see that you have leadership of South College here today, and they came last week. As y'all can tell, we're pretty fiscally conservative here, and a lot of times we move pretty fast and didn't really have a good understanding of where we was going. Kind of got it confused with the lottery a little bit. But we took a week to clear it up, and we appreciate you coming back and running the bill again, and so I'm supportive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members, any further questions? Seeing none, if we're ready, we're going to vote on House Bill 708. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And the ayes have it, and we're going to head out to full committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Back in reverse for our closing act, we have Chairman White on the next three bills. Chairman White, House Bill 752. Do I have a motion and a second? Motion. Second. All right, and Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, 752 was brought to me by the TBR, and they're asking for an increase in where we fund 4 dual enrollment courses. As you see, it has a $9.9 million fiscal note. However, they came to me right before committee, and they're working on see if they can't reduce this a little bit. So I'm going to ask, but I don't have the language yet, and saying that it does exceed the $5 million threshold we're looking at. I'm going to ask if I may roll this for 1 week and see what we may come up with to see if there's any funds available. The committee can maybe deal with this next week.
All right, thank you for that, Chairman White, and we will roll House Bill 752 for 1 week. And Chairman White is up again. Do I have a motion on House Bill 752? Motion. A second? Second. All right, having a motion and a second. Chairman White, you're recognized.
I thought that was 752.
Misread, my fault. House Bill 471. Can I get motion on House Bill 471? Motion. And second? Second. All right, Chairman White, you're recognized.
Okay, members, this particular one, this is, I brought this for More Tech. Now, More Tech is a post-secondary institution that is eligible for under a certain code in our state. It's a private, nonprofit technical school. I brought legislation for them before. It's a primary campus is domiciled in Shelby County in Memphis, and it's been there for 75 years. They are a credible vo-tech school that's doing a lot of good work for vocational development in West Tennessee. In addition to offering diploma, certificate, and associate degree programs, they also offer a baccalaureate degree through an articulation agreement with regionally accredited post-secondary institution. This particular request is for them to be able to receive the dual enrollment. It's got a fiscal note of $148,000, and by my calculations, we're still under little bit over now, including this $500,000. So I would just like to ask the committee consider this one.
Members, questions? Representative Hakeem, you're recognized.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm interested to know that question I had previously about opening the door, about other institutions of this nature coming before us. I don't know who I need to pose that question to, if this opened the door for other institutions of like development.
That might be a question for Lou Hanneman, but Chairman White, would you like to take a crack at it?
Yeah, if you want to go out of session, we can too. Yeah, anything we do up here, you know, we're liable to open the door. We went through this several years ago. I carried this bill for 4 years for Mortec to get into the Tennessee Promise. It took me 4 years to do so. But the bill we had written is so tightly written for them, and now you can any institution can tightly write it for them. But this particular institution is doing a lot of good for workforce development in Shelby County. They got a great track record of 75 years. And after going through it for 4 years before, the committee at the time just felt that this was a worthy institution to invest in. But to answer your question, and I don't know if Mr. Hanneman may want to say more, but any member at any time can draft, and then we could take that particular legislation on the merits of that particular legislation. I just bring it before you because I think this is last year they opened up a car technical institute. They built this new one, and they're training people how to work on cars, which all the car dealers down in West Tennessee greatly appreciate because they couldn't find enough workers. So they're doing this great work down there, and they've asked to be able to get in on this particular dual enrollment, and so that's why I brought this particular legislation.
Just one additional question. Let me see. Oh, it left me. I apologize. Thank you.
Not to worry. Happens to all of us. Representative Baum, you have a question.
Thank you, Chairman Lafferty. Chairman White, I just want to be consistent over time in institutions we approve and don't approve. Seems like we weren't ready to approve Western Governors University today. How would you describe the differences between the Western Governors University application or bill and this one? I mean, maybe I know some of the differences. It sounds like Mortec is in the state of Tennessee. Western Governors University was not in the state of Tennessee, headquartered in Salt Lake City, Utah. Maybe there's some other differences that might have to do with accreditation, whether they're public, whether they're private. Could you just, I don't know, maybe compare the two institutions so that we kind of have a sense of what's different about them, so we know why we sort of deferred the bill that dealt with Western Governors University and what would be different about this one, so that if a lot of these institutions, inside of the state, outside of the state, private institutions, non-accredited institutions, universities like Arizona State or Alabama that have online programs, so if they come to us asking for a bill that permit them to receive lottery funds, we can feel like we're being consistent and treating them all fairly.
I don't know if I can answer comparing to WGU. WGU is a an online higher educational institution. This particular one, they are a hands-on VOTEC school, training people in HVAC, welding, car tech, things that are producing jobs in our community and state, and which is very, very important. One time I was there visiting, and this young man who was being trained in the car mechanics, he said, this particular school with this training has changed my life because you come out of some dire circumstances growing up in the inner city of Memphis. So I don't know if there is a comparison to WGU. other than they are what they are, and this is a hands-on VOTEC institution training people how to get jobs with certificates. I wish I had put on the list, I have Mr. Skip Redmond here, who's the director over there, but I didn't know how he's going to handle the lottery today, so I wasn't for sure he's coming up, but I didn't put him on the list 24 hours, so. But he could probably say more, but that's about all I can say. It's just a different kind of institution, and but it's hands-on, training you real-life jobs and how to fix things, how to repair things, and go out and get a job.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Looks like we're ready to vote on House Bill 471. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, vote no. And the ayes have it. House Bill 471 will pass on to full. Members, do we have any other personal orders, any other business? Seeing none. Folks, we will adjourn if I can get a motion to adjourn. All right, here we are. Have a great afternoon, folks.